Meet David. He is 45 years old, and last Tuesday his net worth quietly crossed $500. Ling ling ling. No party. No champagne. Just a plain number on a screen that finally read 500. By every visible measure, David is doing fine. Better than roughly 80% of American households. He has a steady job as a maintenance engineer, a paid down mortgage, and a portfolio that finally looks like real money. But here is what nobody told David about this exact moment in his financial life. 500,000. 000 is not a finish line. It is not even close. It is the most dangerous number he has ever held. Because for the first time, the money can now lose more in a single week than David earns in an entire month. Worse than that, 500,000. 000 lives in a place almost nobody warns you about. It is big enough to make you feel like you have arrived, but it is not nearly big enough to actually set you free. That gap between feeling rich and being free is the most dangerous middle ground in all of personal finance. And the feeling of, I made it, is exactly the trap. Most people who reach $500, 000, do one of three things that quietly cost them their first million. They loosen up, they chase yield, or they hand it all to a smiling salesman. David is about to make at least one of those mistakes, and he has no idea it is coming. So before you celebrate your own $500, or wherever you are on the way there, watch closely what happens next. Because the hidden math of this number is not what your parents or the internet ever told you. Why $500? 000 feels so different from every number before it. At Zecha, ling ling ling, a bad decision cost you lunch money. The market barely registered. At Osuta, lin lin lin, a 10% drop is $10. Lin lin lin, painful, but recoverable. You could save your way back in a year or two. At Chinchsuda, ling ling ling, that same math turns cruel. A 20% market drop is $100. 000 gone in a matter of weeks. For most workers, 100,000. 000 is more than an entire year of take-home pay. Some people never see that much money in 5 years of saving. You can no longer outsave your mistakes. The portfolio is now bigger than your paycheck can fix. That is the quiet shift almost no one warns you about at this exact milestone, but there is a second shift, and it is even more important. This is the number where a magical thing starts to happen. At 7% a year, 500,000, 000 quietly earns about $35. 000 on its own, every single year, without you lifting a finger. For the first time in David's life, his money is earning nearly as much as he can save from his salary. That is the crossover point. The moment your money starts working harder than you do, and it means the next stretch of your journey depends far less on your income than on your behavior. Charlie Munger famously said the first $100, 000 is the hardest part to accumulate. He was right, but he never said the money gets any safer once it grows larger. In fact, the bigger the number, the bigger the single mistake it can absorb before you even notice. 1,002. Nulla error atus. 000 net worth stings for a month. The same percentage error at $500. 000 can quietly erase 3 or 4 years of saving. So the stakes at this level are not about getting rich. They are about not getting careless. Your income built the first $500. Ling ling ling. Your behavior now decides whether it becomes $1 million or shrinks back to half. 3 people, 1 number. 3 very different futures. Meet 3 people who all crossed $500. 0 inches the same year. All 3 earned solid but ordinary incomes. None of them is a founder or a trust fund heir. They did the hard part already. The first is Emma. She is 30, a data analyst earning $82. 000 a year. Emma hit 500 early by saving aggressively and letting index funds compound for 11 straight years. When her income rose, Emma's spending stayed almost perfectly, stubbornly flat. That single habit is why she reached this number a full decade before most of her coworkers. The second is Ryan. He is 38, a project manager who also reached $500. Linling, but Ryan's net worth is tangled. It is scattered across 5 separate accounts. An old firehundrel at Canner, a forgotten Roth, some company stock, a bloated checking account, and a brokerage he barely opens. Buried in one of those statements is an advisory fee he agreed to years ago and has not thought about since. The third is Sophie. She is 41, a nurse who inherited part of her number and saved the rest. Sophie keeps $400, 000 of her 500 inches, a high-yield savings account earning 4%. She feels safe. 3 people, same headline number, but 5 years from now, their numbers will not look anything alike. And the gap will shock you. Let's run the exact same market, the same years, on all 3 of them. Emma keeps her 500 invested, about 90% in a total market index fund. She adds $1, 000 every month automatically. On the day her paycheck lands. At Shapta%. Her money roughly doubles every 10 years untouched. Even if Emma never saved another dollar, her 500 becomes $1 million in about 10 years. And because she keeps adding, she gets there far sooner. Emma checks her app once a month, then closes it. She does not react to headlines. She has never panic sold. That is the quiet power of crossing this line. Compounding now outruns your own contributions. Ryan's story is different. His 500 is scattered across those 5 accounts, and he has never once added up his fees. Buried in his statements is a 1% advisory fee on 500. Ling. That quietly costs him about $5. 500 a year. Over the next decade, that single overlooked percentage will cost Ryan more than $70. Ling. Ryan is not lazy or foolish. He is simply busy, and the fees hide in plain sight. The advisor he pays has never once beaten a simple index fund. Not after those fees. Sophie took the path that feels safest of all, and it is quietly the most expensive one. She parked $400, 0 inches, a savings account paying 4%. 4% sounds wonderful, until you remember inflation is eating 3% every year. Sophie's real return is barely 1%, while Emma's index fund compounds near 7%. Sophie is not reckless. She is frightened. She confuses feeling safe with being safe, and inflation quietly picks her pocket every year. Over 20 years, the difference between 1% and 7% on $400. 000 is the gap between around $490, null, and over at 5 million, same starting number, same, 20 years, a difference of more than $1 million. None of them feels like they are making a mistake right now. And that is exactly the trap. Every dangerous decision at this level feels reasonable, comfortable, even responsible in the moment. That is why $500, 000 quietly destroys more fortunes than any market crash. The difference is never luck at this level. It is a handful of boring decisions repeated for years. The first move is not to invest more. It is to freeze your life. Here is what nobody tells you about the moment you cross $500. Ling. The very first move is not to invest more. It is to freeze your lifestyle exactly where it is. The moment David saw 500, his brain whispered a quiet, dangerous sentence. You have arrived. That whisper is how lifestyle creep begins. Not with a yacht, but with a slightly nicer everything. A bigger house payment, a newer car lease, a few more subscriptions that never get canceled, Each upgrade feels reasonable, and none of them feels like it will ever hurt your net worth. But raise your monthly spending by just $1. Wu bai. And you redirect $18. 000 a year. 18美元. 000 a year invested at 7% becomes over $250, 0 inches a decade. So the nicer lifestyle does not cost David $1. $500 a month. It costs him a future $250. Lean, lean, lean. David does not need to live like a monk. He needs to keep his spending flat for 3 more years. And let compounding, not his paycheck, do the next stretch of the climb toward $1 million. The people who lose their 500 almost never lose it to a crash. They spend it slowly. They upgrade their way back to broke, one perfectly reasonable purchase at a time. Freeze the lifestyle first. It is the cheapest, most powerful move you will ever make. Emma proved it. When her income rose, her spending stayed flat, and the gap became her fortune. Don't chase yield, and don't feed the termites once the number is big. Ordinary returns start to feel boring, and boredom is expensive. 7% on visisata is 30 visi. 000 a year, but it does not feel exciting on a screen. So David starts getting the calls, the emails, the friend with a can't-miss opportunity. A salesman tells David his money deserves better than a boring index fund, and pitches a private deal promising 18% guaranteed, with almost no risk. Here's the rule that never breaks. Guaranteed and 18% cannot exist in the same sentence. Every extra point of promised return hides an extra point of risk you cannot see yet. The people who blow up at this level rarely do it slowly. They do it chasing one big yield. David does not need 18%. He needs to not lose the 500 he already has. Warren Buffett's first rule is never lose money. His second rule is never forget the first. The boring index fund David already owns has quietly beaten almost every exciting alternative. If the person selling cannot explain exactly where the return comes from, walk away. Then there is the quieter drain fees. Remember Ryan's one? 1% advisory fee. The one he barely remembers agreeing to, that is about $5, $500 a year, whether the market goes up or down. His advisor gets paid the same in a crash as in a boom. Over 20 years, that fee quietly eats around $200. Ling ling ling. A single overlooked percentage, costing him $250,000. Fees are the termites of wealth, invisible, slow, and utterly devastating over time. The fix takes Ryan one afternoon. He reads every statement, writes down every fee, then moves the money into low-cost index funds, charging around 0%. That switch alone saves him roughly $5. 000 a year. At Chinchsuda, ling ling ling. A 1% fee is not small. It is a second mortgage. Ask any advisor one blunt question: what is my total? All in cost in dollars per year. If he cannot answer in plain dollars, that silence is your answer to leave. The superpower almost nobody tells you about at $500K. Here's the part almost no financial channel will tell you about this number. And it is good news. At Chinchsute, ling ling ling, David may have quietly crossed a hidden milestone called Coast Fire, the point where, if you simply leave the money alone, it can grow into a full retirement on its own, without you ever adding another single dollar. Run the math. Wu bai mei yuan, lin ling ling, left untouched at 7% for 20 years, grows to roughly $1. À 9 millions. David does not have to contribute another cent. Compounding has now taken over the job his salary used to do. Think about what that means. For years, David's entire task was to add money, to hustle, to save, to push the number higher but he has quietly already done enough to fund a comfortable retirement just by not touching it. He no longer has to grind at maximum intensity. He can breathe. He can choose work he actually enjoys instead of work that pays the most, as long as he does not sabotage the number he already built. At Chinch Suna, Ling Ling Ling, your money no longer needs your sacrifice. It needs your patience. The hard part, the saving, is essentially done. The only job left is to not talk yourself out of it. 2. Silent risks, timing and taxes. Here's a risk that hides in plain sight once your number gets this large. Timing itself. It is called sequence of returns risk, and most calculators ignore it completely. Two people can earn the exact same average return over 20 years and end up worlds apart. The difference is the order of the returns, especially if you are pulling money out. If a bad crash hits early, right when you start withdrawing, you lock in losses that the next rebound can never fully undo. That is why the years right around retirement are the most fragile in your entire plan. If David is near retirement, a cash cushion of 1 to 2 years of expenses is not weakness. It is armor. It lets him avoid selling stocks at the worst possible moment. The goal now is not maximum return. It is surviving the sequence long enough to win. Then there are taxes. At Chinch Suda, Ling Ling Ling, where your money lives matters as much as how it grows. $1 in a Roth, a traditional 401k, and a taxable account are simply not the same dollars. A Roth dollar is worth more because it is already taxed. Most people never map their asset location, so they pay thousands more than they must. Put your fastest growing investments inside your Roth, where the growth is never taxed again. Keep your bonds and slower assets in tax-deferred accounts, where the bite is smaller. None of this is exciting. All of it quietly keeps more of your 500 inches your pocket. At this level, the tax code is either your silent partner or your silent landlord. You choose. The real enemy is not the market. It is you. When the number gets big, your brain starts treating it as an identity, not an account balance. David begins checking the portfolio 3 times a day. On a 500 000 portfolio, a normal 2% day swings, $10, 0 inches or out, watching $10. 000 move around before lunch is a fast path to panic selling. The investors who win at this level are almost boringly calm. They check rarely and react less. Emma looks once a month. Ryan learned to stop checking during downturns entirely. The market pays the patient and taxes the anxious. Your own emotions are the biggest fee you will ever pay. Another trap is comparison. Once you have 500, you notice everyone who has more. A friend with a bigger house, a hotter stock, a flashier win to envy. Comparison pushes people into risks they never needed to take. Your 500 does not care about your neighbor's boat or your cousin's crypto coin. The only race that matters is your money against your own future needs. Name the emotion when it shows up. Greed, fear, envy, and then do absolutely nothing. Doing nothing on purpose is the most underrated skill in all of investing. The urge to do something during a crash is the single most expensive feeling in finance. This is why automation quietly beats every exciting move. Emma never decides whether to invest. Yuan. 000 leaves automatically each month. So fear and greed never get a vote. Set your contributions to fire on payday before you can see the money or feel tempted. David goes further. He sets his accounts to auto-invest, then removes the trading app from his phone's home screen, adding friction to every bad impulse. The best portfolio is not the cleverest one. It is the one you will actually leave alone. And once you have real money, spend one afternoon protecting it. If David has no will and no updated beneficiaries, and something happens to him tomorrow, his $500, 000 could sit frozen in probate for a year. A basic will and updated beneficiary forms move that money to his family in weeks, not years. An umbrella insurance policy, often $1 million of coverage, costs around $200 a year and protects the entire 500 from a single bad car accident lawsuit. Most people insure a $30,000 car but leave a $500,000 net worth completely exposed. Protecting the downside is not pessimism. It is what lets you invest the upside with confidence. The great inversion of wealth. Now here is the twist that feels wrong until you sit with it for a quiet moment. The biggest threat to your $500, 000 is not the market. It is you. Every mistake we covered, chasing yield, lifestyle creep, panic selling, comes from inside your own head. The market is not trying to take your money. Your own impatience is far more dangerous. The moment you cross 500, your job quietly changes from earner to guardian. For years, your task was to add money, to hustle, to push the number higher. But now the number is big enough that your best move is often to do almost nothing. Here's the quotable line at 500. The market moves more in a day than you save in a year, which means you can no longer save your way out of a mistake. You can only avoid making one. The person who does nothing calmly for 5 years usually beats the one who tinkers. Emma did almost nothing, and her 500 is quietly on its way to nearly $2 million. Ryan fixed his fees once, then did nothing, and saved himself $250,000. Sophie made one change, invested her cash, then did nothing, and beat inflation for the first time in her life. None of them got rich by being brilliant. They got rich by refusing to be careless. That is the great inversion of wealth. Early on, action builds it. Later, restraint protects it. The hardest skill at $500. 000 is learning to sit still on purpose. Your money no longer needs your excitement. It needs your patience and your absence. Think of a tree you planted years ago. Digging it up to check the roots only kills it. Your portfolio is that tree, and constant checking is you disturbing the roots out of anxiety. The wealthiest investors are not the busiest. They are often the ones who forgot their password. Bringing it back to you, wherever your own number happens to sit right now, 50,000, 000, or already past $500, ling. The lesson stays the same. The habits that get you to the number are not the same habits that keep it. Getting there rewards hustle. Keeping it rewards restraint. And almost nobody teaches the second part. When you finally cross $500, ling, do not celebrate by spending. Celebrate by protecting. Freeze your lifestyle. Cut your fees. Automate everything. Cover the downside with a will and an umbrella policy. Then step back and let compounding carry you the rest of the way to $1 million. David finally understood. His job was never to beat the market. It was only to outlast his own worst impulses. That is the whole game at 500. Guard the number and let time do the rest. The irony is beautiful. The less you touch it now, the more it quietly becomes. At this level, the market moves more in a day than you can save in a year. So your calm is now worth more than your effort. Guard it like the asset it truly is. If this showed you something you did not know was happening with your money, you know what helps? Subscribe to Desmond Wealth and hit the bell, so the next number does not catch you unprepared. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every single day. Do the math, then make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch, because the number you protect will always outlast the number you chase.